January 25, 2026. Engels-2 Air Base, Russia, 2:17 a.m., a $270 million Tu-160M strategic bomber, the kind that makes defense contractors salivate and accountants weep, is sitting on a tarmac 600 miles inside Russian territory, protected by what Moscow calls impenetrable air defense, surrounded by security that's supposed to make Fort Knox look like a convenience store. And in exactly 90 seconds, it's going to get absolutely annihilated by drones that cost less than a Honda Civic. But here's the kicker. That's not even the crazy part. The crazy part is that Ukrainian special forces were literally seconds away from stealing this thing. Like Grand Theft Auto, but with a nuclear-capable strategic bomber. They had the codes. They had the starter unit. They were reaching for the boarding ladder when Russian security finally woke up. So Ukraine said, "Fine, if we can't drive it home, nobody gets to play with it." What happened next was so devastating, so precisely executed, that within 24 hours, Russia evacuated its entire strategic bomber fleet to the Arctic Circle, 2,000 miles north, in the middle of winter, in a logistics nightmare that's still unfolding right now. This isn't just a story about one strike. This is about the moment Russia realized that nowhere is safe, that billion-dollar defense systems are basically expensive lawn ornaments, and that Ukraine's been playing chess while Moscow's been playing checkers with pieces that keep mysteriously disappearing. The countdown just started, and by the time it's over, Russia's going to learn that having the world's most advanced bomber means absolutely nothing when your security is held together with ego and incompetence. Let's talk about the Tu-160M for a second, because understanding what Russia just lost requires understanding what this aircraft represents to the Kremlin. The Tu-160 isn't just a bomber, it's a statement. A middle finger to Western aviation superiority, wrapped in white paint and Soviet nostalgia. NATO calls it the Blackjack. Russia calls it the White Swan. And if you've ever wondered why Russia chose to name their deadliest strategic bomber after a graceful bird, well, you're about to find out. It's the most ironic name in military aviation history. This thing is massive. We're talking about the heaviest combat aircraft ever built. Longer than a Boeing 737. Powered by 4 NK-32 engines that each produce more thrust than anything American engineers have managed to build. When this aircraft goes to full afterburner, it can hit Mach 2 while carrying 12 cruise missiles that can strike targets 3,000 miles away. On paper, it's terrifying. In Russian propaganda videos, it's basically a flying symbol of restored Soviet greatness. Putin loves trotting these things out for photo ops. They've flown them to Venezuela, Syria, and anywhere else Moscow wants to remind the world that Russia's still a superpower. Remember that Venezuela trip in 2018? Russia sent two Tu-160s halfway across the planet to conduct exercises in America's backyard. The messaging was obvious. Look at our long-range strike capability. Look how we can threaten your hemisphere. Be afraid. The US response: they tracked the bombers the entire way, monitored their every move, and basically treated it like watching a parade of loud, visible aircraft that showed up on sensors like a Christmas tree. American defense officials didn't even pretend to be worried. One analyst literally described them as impossible to miss on radar because the Tu-160 is about as stealthy as a freight train. But here's what makes the Tu-160M particularly valuable to Russia right now. They don't have many of them. The Soviet Union built 35 before collapsing. Russia inherited a bunch that promptly fell into disrepair because maintaining supersonic strategic bombers is expensive, and Russia in the 1990s was broke. They've been slowly modernizing them. The M stands for modernized, but production is painfully slow. Each one costs roughly $270 million. Each one takes years to build. Each one represents a significant chunk of Russia's strategic deterrent capability, and each one is supposed to be protected by the most advanced air defense systems Russian engineers can design. Which brings us to Engels-2 Air Base. This base is the home of Russia's strategic bomber fleet. It's 600 miles from the Ukrainian border, deep in Russian territory, along the Volga River, the kind of location that's supposed to be completely safe from enemy action. Moscow stationed their most valuable aircraft here because the strategic depth was supposed to make them untouchable. They built multiple layers of air defense around it. S-400 long-range systems that can supposedly track targets 250 miles away. Panzer S-1 short-range systems designed specifically to kill drones and cruise missiles. electronic warfare systems to jam enemy guidance, radar networks that should catch anything approaching. On paper, Engels-2 is a fortress. In practice? Well, we're about to find out it's more like a fortress made of cardboard with really expensive paint. So Russia's got these incredibly expensive, strategically vital bombers sitting at what's supposed to be an impenetrable base. They're confident. They're comfortable. They've probably got guards taking smoke breaks because nothing's ever going to threaten this deep into Mother Russia, right? Wrong. Because 48 hours before the strike, Ukraine set a trap so clever that Russia walked right into it and handed Ukraine the perfect target on a silver platter. Here's where Ukrainian military intelligence proves they're playing 4D chess, while Russia's still trying to figure out how the pieces move. 48 hours before the Engels-2 strike, Ukraine launched what appeared to be a routine interdiction mission against a Russian transport convoy. Nothing unusual. Ukraine's been hitting supply lines for 3 years now. Except this particular convoy was moving something special. A brand new Tu-160M fresh from the production facility. And here's where it gets beautiful. The Ukrainian strike didn't destroy the bomber. They clipped it, damaged it just enough to ground it, but not enough to write it off completely. Strategic brilliance disguised as a partial success. Think about what this forces Russia to do. They've got a brand new, extremely expensive aircraft that's damaged but repairable. They can't just abandon it. That's a $250 million investment. They need to get it to a repair facility immediately. The closest major base with the specialized equipment, Engels-2, so Russia does exactly what Ukraine predicted. They transport this damaged bomber to Engels-2, but here's the problem. The specialized hangars are occupied. Russian logistics, which has been a rolling disaster since day one of this war, hasn't cleared space yet. Repair schedules are backed up. Facilities are overwhelmed. Someone in the Russian command structure makes a decision that will haunt them forever. Park the damaged Tu-160M outside on the North Hardstand while they prepare the hangar space. It'll just be temporary. A few days max. What could possibly go wrong? I want you to appreciate the absolute comedy of this situation. Russia just placed their most expensive, most strategically valuable aircraft outside, in the open, like a used car sitting in a dealership parking lot. The crown jewel of Russian strategic aviation, currently sitting under the stars waiting for repairs like it's a Toyota with a broken transmission. And it gets better, because Russia's so confident in their air defense umbrella, they don't even bother with additional security measures. Why would they? Engels-2 is protected by systems that cost more than some countries' entire defense budgets. The S-400 batteries surrounding the base can supposedly shoot down anything from cruise missiles to stealth fighters. The Panzer systems are designed specifically to kill drone swarms. Moscow genuinely believed that their strategic depth and technological superiority made this aircraft untouchable. 600 miles from Ukraine, surrounded by integrated air defense. What could Ukraine possibly do? Ukrainian intelligence is watching this unfold in real time via satellite imagery and human intelligence sources. They see the damaged bomber arrive. They watch it get parked outside. They track the security patterns, the guard rotations, the radar coverage gaps, and they start planning something so audacious it makes Hollywood heist movies look amateur. See, Ukraine doesn't just want to destroy this bomber, they want to make a statement. They want to prove that Russia's impenetrable defenses are about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. And most importantly, they want to demonstrate that nowhere in Russia is safe, not even their most heavily defended strategic base. The Ukrainian plan has two parts. Plan A is genuinely insane. Infiltrate special forces into Russian territory, bypass all security, and literally steal the Tu-160M. Fly it out or drive it to friendly territory. The ultimate humiliation for Moscow. Plan B is simpler but equally devastating. If the heist fails, destroy the bomber and everything around it so thoroughly that Russia questions their entire security infrastructure. While Russia's patting themselves on the back for having such great air defense, Ukraine's assembling a strike package that's going to expose every single weakness in that system. They're gathering 50 modified Beaver drones, long-range UAVs that cost about $30,000 each. They're programming sophisticated decoys to trick Russian interceptors. They're coordinating with GUR special forces for ground infiltration. And most importantly, they're waiting for the perfect moment when Russian vigilance is at its lowest. That moment comes at 2 a.m. on January 25th, the graveyard shift, when security personnel are tired, when response times are slowest, when human error is most likely. Ukraine's been studying Russian base operations for months. They know the patterns, they know the weaknesses. 6 mini quadcopter drones ghost through thick fog over the Volga River, providing real-time reconnaissance. They confirm what Ukrainian intelligence already suspected. The Tu-160M is sitting right there in the open, completely exposed, with security that's way more focused on the perimeter than internal threats. The scouts get visual lock on their target, that distinctive white silhouette gleaming under the base lights. The swarm is inbound. 50 Beaver drones, loaded with high-explosive warheads, screaming across 620 miles of Russian heartland at 260 feet altitude. Low enough to hide beneath radar coverage, fast enough to reach the target before Russia can react. But Ukraine's not just sending drones to fly straight at the target like some amateur operation. They're about to teach Russia's billion-dollar air defense system a lesson in economics that's going to sting for years. So you've got 50 drones heading toward Russia's most valuable aircraft, protected by air defenses that supposedly represent the cutting edge of Russian military technology. The kind of scenario where conventional wisdom says the attacker gets destroyed and Russia wins. Except Ukraine didn't study conventional wisdom. They studied Russian psychology, Russian doctrine, and Russian ego. And what they're about to do with that knowledge is going to make every air defense operator at Engels-2 question their career choices and possibly their will to live. Here's where Ukraine demonstrates that sometimes the best way to beat expensive technology is to make it shoot at things that don't matter. The 50 drone formation approaches Russian airspace, staying low over the Volga River. The terrain masking is perfect. They're literally hiding behind the curvature of the earth and using riverbanks as natural cover. To the S-400's long-range search radar scanning from miles away, these drones are invisible, just background clutter mixed with morning fog and terrain. Russian radar operators are monitoring their screens, probably bored out of their minds. It's 2 a.m. Nothing ever happens during the graveyard shift. They may be checking their phones, thinking about breakfast, counting down the hours until shift change. And then suddenly, 10 specialized decoy drones break formation and execute a vertical climb. They go from low-altitude cruise to a steep ascent in seconds, lighting up Russian radar screens like a Christmas tree. These decoys are broadcasting radar signatures designed to mimic exactly what a Storm Shadow cruise missile looks like during terminal approach. Inside the S-400 command vehicle, alarms start screaming. The radar display goes from quiet surveillance to red alerts everywhere. The officer in charge looks at his screen and sees what appears to be a NATO-level cruise missile strike incoming toward their most valuable aircraft. He doesn't hesitate. He doesn't wait for confirmation or verification. He doesn't think about whether this makes tactical sense. He just reacts exactly how his training and doctrine tell him to react. Eliminate the threat immediately. 448 N-6E interceptor missiles launch from their tubes with that distinctive whoosh of solid rocket motors igniting. These aren't cheap fireworks. Each missile costs approximately $2 million. They streak into the upper atmosphere, chase down the decoys, and eliminate them in spectacular fireballs at 30,000 feet. Total cost of intercept, $8 million. Total cost of targets destroyed, $50,000. Let me put that in perspective for you. Ukraine just tricked Russia into spending $8 million, enough to buy a nice house in most American cities, to shoot down the equivalent of 10 sophisticated remote control planes. The return on investment is so hilariously one-sided that financial analysts would weep at the beauty of it. And the Russian crews, they're probably celebrating right now. High fives in the command vehicle. We just intercepted a NATO cruise missile strike. Commanders are already drafting the report about how their vigilance and quick reaction saved the strategic bomber. Medals might be mentioned. They have absolutely no idea. They just got played harder than a fiddle at a country music festival. While the S-400's big eyes are staring at the sky where the decoys died, the real threat is still coming in low and fast. The 40 remaining Beaver drones haven't even been detected yet. They're still hugging the terrain, still invisible to the long-range systems, still steadily approaching their targets. But now we get to the second layer of Russian air defense, the Panzer S-1 systems. These are supposed to be the ultimate drone killers. Russian marketing materials claim they can track 300 targets simultaneously, engage multiple threats at once, and provide an impenetrable umbrella of protection against exactly this kind of swarm attack. The brochure makes it sound like something from a sci-fi movie. The reality is about to be significantly more embarrassing. The Panzer systems start picking up returns, but there's a problem. Actually, several problems are happening simultaneously. The Volga River creates what radar operators call clutter, background noise that makes it hard to distinguish between real targets and environmental interference. The electronic emissions from the dying decoys are still creating noise in the electromagnetic spectrum, and the Ukrainian drones are approaching from an angle that puts them in the worst possible position for the Panzer's fire control systems. For about 45 seconds, the Panzer's fire control computer is essentially having a seizure, trying to sort out what's real and what's not. Operators are frantic, watching their displays strobe between targets and false returns, trying to get a clean lock on anything. When they finally do start engaging, they make a critical mistake based on their training. The decoys created the illusion of a high-altitude strike profile. Standard doctrine for protecting strategic aircraft says you defend against overhead attacks first. Bombs and missiles coming from above are the primary threat to parked aircraft. So the Panzer operators, doing exactly what their manuals tell them to do, elevate their dual 30mm cannons toward the sky. They're scanning for the follow-up high-altitude strike that must be coming. They're so focused on defending against an overhead attack that they've left the low-altitude approach corridors completely open. It's like a goalkeeper in soccer being so worried about high shots that they completely forget someone might kick the ball along the ground. Except instead of losing a game, they're about to lose a $250 million aircraft. The genius of this Ukrainian plan is becoming clear. Every layer of Russian air defense is reacting exactly as predicted. The S-400 wasted its long-range missiles on decoys. The Panzer is pointing the wrong direction. And nobody's actually protecting the thing they're supposed to be protecting. But wait, there's still ground security, right? Surely someone on the ground is paying attention. Well, about that. So here's where we are. Russia's White Swan is sitting on a tarmac at Engels-2, engines destroyed, hydraulics bleeding out, looking like a $270 million monument to the concept that expensive doesn't mean invincible. 60 cruise missiles that were supposed to freeze Ukrainian cities are now abstract art made of melted titanium and silicon. And Russia's entire strategic bomber fleet is hiding in the Arctic Circle because nowhere else feels safe anymore. Ukraine didn't just win a tactical victory on January 25th. They rewrote the rules of modern warfare in one 60-second sequence of explosions and fire. They proved that billion-dollar defense systems can be defeated by creative tactics and cheap technology. They demonstrated that Russia's strategic depth is actually strategic vulnerability when you can't defend all of it. And they showed that AI-guided drone swarms aren't science fiction. They're the present tense of combat operations. But more than that, they proved something psychological that might matter more than any destroyed equipment. Russia can be beaten. Not theoretically, not eventually, right now, today, with technology that's accessible to any country with engineering talent and industrial capacity. That's the real fallout from this strike. Every military planner on Earth just watched Ukraine make a mockery of Russian air defense. Every potential adversary just learned that expensive systems have exploitable weaknesses. Every small country that's been worried about bullying from bigger neighbors just saw proof that asymmetric tactics can level the playing field. Putin ignored the warning. Ukraine told him through their actions that nowhere was safe. He didn't believe them. So on January 25th, Ukraine made him regret it in the most spectacular way possible. And here's the thing, this isn't over. The Engels-2 strike isn't an ending, it's barely the middle. Because Ukraine's proven they can hit deep into Russia whenever they want, and Russia's proven they can't reliably stop it. Every day Putin continues. This war is another day Ukrainian operators are selecting targets, planning operations, and getting ready to make him regret his decisions all over again. So what do you think? Did Ukraine just fundamentally change modern warfare, or is this a one-off success that won't be replicated? If you were advising Putin right now, what would you even tell him? How do you defend against threats that cost less to deploy than to stop? Drop your thoughts in the comments because honestly, we're all trying to figure out what the hell comes next. And if you want to understand how we got here, how drone warfare evolved from hobby toys to strategic weapons in less than a decade, hit that subscribe button because we're diving deep into the technology and tactics that are reshaping 21st century conflicts. This is just the beginning. The drones are getting smarter, the tactics are getting bolder, and Russia's air defense, it's getting a whole lot more expensive to operate while becoming less and less effective. The Beavers took down the Swan, and Putin's still trying to figure out how it happened, while Ukraine's already planning what they're hitting next.